Before she ever set foot in that chamber, before she ever locked eyes with Amy Coney Barrett, Jasmine Crockett had been forged in battles most people never saw. Her story was not written in ivy-covered halls or gilded clerkships. It was carved into the neighborhoods where people lived paycheck to paycheck, where voices went unheard until someone chose to fight for them. That someone was her. Crockett began her career not as a politician, but as a public defender, a role most in power would never dream of taking. She sat beside the accused, the poor, the forgotten, the people the system preferred to discard. She listened to their stories, carried their burdens, and walked them through a system that was never built for their survival. She saw how a single mother could lose everything for a minor offense, how an immigrant could be caged for a paperwork error, how justice bent more easily for the wealthy than for the working poor. And instead of becoming hardened by it, she became louder. She refused to let silence or resignation define her. That fire raw, unpolished, unapologetic was what defined Jasmine Crockett from the start. She didn't come into politics with the gloss of perfection. She came in with scars, with a voice that sometimes cracked with emotion, with an authenticity that rattled the polished chambers of power. While others softened their words to fit in, Crockett sharpened hers to cut through the noise. She wasn't interested in belonging to an elite circle. She was interested in tearing down the walls that kept people out. Her political career mirrored her days in the courtroom. Opponents underestimated her, dismissed her as too emotional, too blunt, too young, too black. Each label was supposed to diminish her, but instead, each one became fuel. Every attempt to write her off made her stronger. She wasn't there to please. She was there to speak truths others were too afraid to say. And when the spotlight turned to her, she didn't shy away. She leaned in. Family and community were never abstractions for her. They were her compass. Raised in a household that taught the value of hard work and dignity, she carried her roots into every fight. She saw her own relatives in the clients she defended, her neighbors in the communities she served, her younger self in the girls who now looked up to her. Justice wasn't a career choice. It was personal. It was survival. It was a promise she made to every person who had ever been told it didn't belong at the table. That authenticity made her stand out in the political arena. While others rehearsed their lines, Crockett spoke from the gut. While others tiptoed around controversy, she ran toward it with clear eyes and unshakable conviction. Some called it recklessness. To those who believed in her, it was courage. And in a political climate obsessed with image, where every word was weighed for optics, where unvarnished truth was not just refreshing, it was radical. It was also dangerous. Her refusal to bend drew fire from the establishment. She was targeted, criticized, mocked. Opponents tried to paint her as unhinged, too bold for the seriousness of governance. But each attempt at humiliation backfired. People saw themselves. In her defiance, they recognized the grit of someone who had been told no all her life and chose to answer with "Watch me." Every headline meant to weaken her only expanded her reach. Every sneer only made her voice echo louder, and that voice honed in courtrooms and protest halls was exactly what made her a threat to someone like Amy Coney Barrett. Because Crockett didn't come from the same world. She didn't play by the same rules. Where Barrett commanded silence with icy distance, Crockett commanded attention with unflinching presence. Where Barrett relied on authority to end a conversation, Crockett relied on truth to ignite one. Her career had been one long preparation for that very moment in the chamber. Every fight she had waged, every underestimation she had endured, every battle she had walked into knowing the odds were against her, they all led here. She had faced power before, but power in robes, power wrapped in sanctity. Power wielded with the intent to silence her, that would be the test of a lifetime. Still, those who knew her best would not have doubted her. Crockett was not the type to shrink. She was not the type to play small in the presence of authority. If anything, she thrived in the moments when everyone else held their breath. It was in those moments that her voice found its sharpest edge, her presence its brightest glow dot. And so, when Barrett cut her off with that chilling rebuke, it wasn't just another interruption. It was the echo of every barrier Crockett had faced, the weight of every voice that had been silenced before hers. The room thought they saw a woman put in her place. What they were about to see was a woman reclaiming that place with fire, because if Amy Coney Barrett was the embodiment of silence and control, Jasmine Crockett was the embodiment of defiance and truth. And that courage, the courage to stand tall when every force demanded she sit down, would soon be tested in the most brutal way. Asterisk, the chamber had not yet exhaled from the sting of Barrett's rebuke when the judge pressed forward. "This is not a stage for political theater, Ms. Crockett. We are here to deal in facts, not grandstanding." Each syllable landed like a gavel strike, meant not only for Crockett, but for the entire room to remind them who presided over this arena. Crockett lifted her chin slightly, her eyes fixed on Barrett, but she didn't speak. The pause itself became electric. In that hesitation, Barrett saw an opening. She leaned into it, stacking her words with clipped precision. "You will confine yourself to the matter at hand. If you cannot, then your remarks will be stricken from the record." The threat hung in the air, heavy, final. The silence between them thickened. Crockett's hands rested calmly on the desk, but her stillness carried a weight that unsettled. She didn't fidget. She didn't avert her gaze. She allowed the moment to expand, as though daring Barrett to believe she had truly won it. The cameras caught every flicker. One panned across Barrett's face, controlled, but with the faintest trace of irritation. Another cut to Crockett. Her jaw set, her expression unreadable, eyes gleaming with something that suggested calculation rather than defeat. The crowd in the gallery shifted uncomfortably. Some leaned in, waiting for the explosion they felt must come. Others looked away, as though embarrassed by the imbalance they were witnessing. Barrett, sensing she had cornered her opponent, pressed harder. "You are unable to respect this court. Perhaps you should reconsider your role within it." Gasps rippled through the gallery. A statement like the tan, open questioning of Crockett's legitimacy was not procedure. It was personal, and everyone knew it. The tension mounted with each second of silence that followed. Crockett's lips parted slightly, as if she might respond. But instead, she let the words linger in the air, amplifying their sting. Barrett shifted in her chair just barely, but the movement betrayed her own discomfort. The judge had extended her hand too far, revealing a crack in her carefully polished restraint, and still Crockett waited. The weight of that pause was more powerful than any immediate rebuttal could have been. Her silence was not surrender, was strategy. It forced the room to sit with Barrett's words, to feel their arrogance, their dismissal, their imbalance. Murmur ran through the gallery. Spectator whispered too loudly, "She's not going to take that." Another answered, "But what can she do? He's got the robe." Phones buzzed as reporters fired off updates. Barrett corners Crockett in. Stunning rebuke. Clips were already racing online, edited into 10-second loops of power and silence. Barrett, emboldened by what she perceived as compliance, doubled down. "This proceeding will not devolve into spectacle. You'll either contribute meaningfully, or you will remain silent." Her words dripped with finality. The chamber had become a battlefield of stillness and command, each side waiting to see who would break first. Crockett inhaled slowly, her shoulders steady, her gaze never faltering. The room could feel it like a storm gathering on the horizon, invisible at first, but undeniable in its weight. Barrett adjusted her papers as though to close the matter, certain that she had contained the fire, but the fire was not out. It was waiting. For a long moment, it appeared as though the judge's strategy had worked. That Crockett's silence was submission. Heads shook in quiet disbelief. Some in the gallery looked down at their laps, convinced they had just witnessed a silencing too powerful to challenge. And then, almost imperceptibly, Crockett moved. She leaned forward, her voice still unsounded, but her presence shifting the entire atmosphere. The storm that had been gathering in silence was about to break. It looked like Barrett had silenced her, till Crockett leaned forward. The silence shattered with a single, deliberate breath. Crockett leaned forward, her hands still calm upon the desk, her eyes locked on Barrett's. When she finally spoke, her voice was low but resonant, steady enough to cut through the chamber, like steel wrapped in velvet. "Respect, Judge Barrett," she began, "is not the same thing as obedience. And if the truth makes you uncomfortable, perhaps it is not my words that need to be struck from the record, but the system that fears them." The room froze. For the first time, Barrett's composure faltered, her lips tightening as though to swallow a retort. Crockett had landed the first blow, a clean strike to the arrogance of authority disguised as order. She wasn't done. "You'd speak of facts," Crockett continued, her tone tightening. "So let's talk about them. Fact, this courtroom was built to hold the powerful accountable, not to silence the powerless. Fact. When voices like mine are interrupted, it is not procedure, it is precedent. Precedent as old as this country's refusal to hear those who don't fit neatly into its definition of power." Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Heads tilted forward, eyebrows raised, pens scrawling furiously across notepads. Reporters who had been bored by procedure now sat bolt upright, fingers racing to capture the moment. A woman in the audience whispered, "She's not backing down," and another replied, "She's just getting started." Barrett's eyes narrowed. "Miss Crockett, this is not the butt." Crockett cut clean across her, voice rising like a bell. "You've had your turn, Judge. Now it's mine." Gasps erupted. No one spoke to Barrett like that. Not here. Not ever. Crockett pressed on, each word another jab, another strike. "You tell me to respect this chamber, but respect is earned. Respect is not interrupting a congresswoman mid-sentence. Respect is not dismissing the concerns of those you'd rather not hear. Respect is allowing truth to be spoken, even if it stings your ears." Barrett shifted slightly in her seat, an almost imperceptible recoil. The robe, the authority, the mask of composure each seemed a little thinner now. She tried to interject, but Crockett raised her hand, not to silence but to signal. "I am not finished." And then came the body blows. "You question my role here? My right to speak? I was elected by people who trust me to carry their voices into rooms like this. People who work 2 jobs and still can't afford health care. People whose children go to schools without enough textbooks. People who look at this chamber and wonder if anyone here even remembers their names. That is who I speak for. And when you tell me to reconsider my role, you're telling them to reconsider theirs as Americans, and I won't let you." Gallery broke into hushed applause before quickly quieting again, fearful of decorum but unable to contain the eruption. Al-Rat's jaw tightened. The once serene figure now looked unsettled. Caught off guard by the refusal of her adversary to yield, Crockett's words turned sharper, faster now, combinations instead of single strikes. "You sit in judgment with the privilege of silence. But silence has always been a weapon wielded against women like me. Against immigrants who are told to wait their turn. Against black women who are told they are too loud, too angry, too much. But silence does not protect justice. Silence protects power." It was relentless. Each sentence landed like a punch. The rhythm building, the gallery hanging on every word. Crockett's voice didn't waver. Her cadence was measured, deliberate. As though she had been training for this very exchange her entire life. Barrett tried once more to cut in. Her voice slightly raised, an uncharacteristic crack in her poise. "Congresswoman, this is not what?" Crockett snapped, slicing through the attempted interruption. "Not the place, not the time. For generations, that has been the refrain used to keep people quiet. It's never the place, never the time, always the excuse. And yet somehow it's always the perfect moment for authority to dismiss us. Well, this time, you don't get the last word." The audience leaned forward as if pulled by invisible strings. Cameras zoomed in close, catching every flicker of expression. Barrett's tightening features, Crockett's burning intensity, the collective awe of the room witnessing. A role reversal in real time. Crockett wasn't finished. She leaned even closer now, her voice softening but carrying more weight than ever. "You tried to reduce me to silence. But you cannot silence dignity. You cannot silence truth. And you cannot silence the millions who see themselves in me and who know, just as I know, that justice belongs to all of us, not just to those who wear a robe. The chamber erupted not in cheers, not in applause, but in the stunned, deafening sound of realization. Even silence itself seemed to gasp. Barrett, for the first time, looked unsteady. The composure that had been her armor appeared cracked. She opened her mouth, but found no words sharp enough to reclaim control. The robe was still on her shoulders, but the authority had shifted. It belonged now to the congresswoman across from her, the one she had tried to corner, the one who had turned the tables blow by blow, and Crockett knew it. She leaned back slightly, letting the silence work for her this time. Chambers stayed on her, waiting for more. She had flipped the dynamic completely, not with rage, but with precision, with a kind of truth that could not be denied. The audience buzzed, whispers flying through the air. She dismantled her. Barrett looked shaken. This is going viral tonight. Phones were already out, clips already clipped, captions already written. The courtroom had become a stage, and Crockett's counterattack was the headline. Barrett shuffled her papers, her gaze fixed downward, as though searching for a foothold that no longer existed. The robe still hung from her shoulders, but in the eyes of those watching, its power had dimmed. The authority of silence and control had been outmatched by the audacity of defiance. Crockett sat back, composed, her breathing steady. She had not shouted, she had not flailed. She had simply spoken with the clarity of someone who knew the truth was her greatest weapon. And she had wielded it like a sword. The chamber was forever changed. The trial, once rigid and predictable, had transformed into something else entirely. Crockett's words did not just counter Barrett's rebuke, they detonated it. They left in their wake a room that would never return to silence, a judge who could not return to untouchable, a moment that would ripple far beyond the walls that tried to contain it. And that's when the trial itself changed.